What if the treaty that formally ended World War I was never actually signed? What if Germany and the Allies simply walked away from that table in 1919 without a single signature? On June 28, 1919, in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, Germany signed a treaty that placed responsibility for the war's losses and damage on Germany and its allies, stripped away German territory, drastically reduced its military, and imposed massive reparations. The treaty didn't just end a war. Many historians argue it helped create the conditions for the next one. So what if Germany had simply refused to sign? Here's the thing. Germany came genuinely close to refusing. The German delegation called the terms a peace of violence, and for a tense stretch of days, seriously considered rejecting them outright, even at the risk of war resuming. But refusing wouldn't have meant freedom from harsh terms. The Allied naval blockade, which had already contributed to severe shortages and suffering among German civilians, could have continued, and Allied troops stood ready to advance further into German territory. Refusing to sign might not have led to a lighter peace. It might have led to no peace at all, and an even harsher settlement imposed by force afterward. But let's say a different path opens instead. A real stalemate forces the Allies and Germany back to the negotiating table, producing a settlement without the war guilt clause and with far less punishing reparations. Germany's fragile new Weimar Republic, facing less economic pressure, might have had a better chance of surviving its early crises. In our timeline, Germany suffered catastrophic hyperinflation in 1923. Banknotes became almost worthless, and people sometimes needed wheelbarrows of money just to buy basic goods. The economist John Maynard Keynes warned, even at the time, that the treaty's economic consequences could create desperation and instability. So what happens if that specific wound never exists? Some historians argue that without the humiliation and resentment surrounding Versailles, the fertile political ground that Adolf Hitler exploited so effectively in the 1920s and 30s might never have existed in quite the same form. Hitler could still have emerged. Germany could still have faced political extremism. But one of the Nazi movement's most powerful weapons, the promise to destroy Versailles, would simply disappear, and that could change everything. Follow this timeline further. The League of Nations was created as part of the post-war settlement and became one of history's first major attempts at organized international cooperation. If Versailles never exists, the League might never be created in the same form, or it could emerge later under completely different rules. And that could mean a very different blueprint for the international institutions that eventually followed after World War II. But here's the twist most people don't know. The country everyone assumes helped shape the final peace settlement's toughest terms barely became part of it at all. The United States Senate actually voted against ratifying the Treaty of Versailles twice. America never joined the League of Nations, despite President Woodrow Wilson being one of its strongest advocates. Instead, the United States later signed its own separate peace treaty with Germany in 1921. So the nation many people picture as one of the architects of the post-war order never actually ratified the Treaty of Versailles. And that raises an even bigger question. If Germany had refused to sign in 1919, could the Allies have maintained a united front? Would France have demanded an even harsher settlement? Would Britain have pushed for compromise? Would America have stayed involved? Or could Europe have entered the 1920s without a clear peace settlement at all? And if Germany avoided the humiliation of Versailles, would Hitler still have risen? Would World War II still have happened? Maybe, maybe not. Because history is never controlled by one treaty. The Great Depression still could have happened. Nationalism was still growing. Communism still threatened Europe's political order. Italy and Japan still had expansionist ambitions, and Germany still wanted to regain its influence. Removing Versailles would not magically create a peaceful Europe. It would simply remove one major path that history actually took. Perhaps Germany becomes a more stable democracy. Perhaps another authoritarian leader eventually rises. Perhaps a different European conflict erupts. Or perhaps the Second World War, at least in the form we know it, never happens. We can never know. because history gives us only one timeline. But sometimes, the most important turning points aren't battles. They're decisions made around a table, a signature, a treaty, a choice made in a single moment that can shape generations. The Treaty of Versailles was one of those choices, and if that signature had never happened, the entire 20th century might have looked different. If that changed how you think about the peace that ended World War I, subscribe. Lost Timelines finds a new one every week.